Hello friends, I am Ashwin. In this video I will share a beautiful chess trick that you can play against the Sicilian defense, and I called it a Magnus Carlsen chess trick. Well, why I called it Magnus Carlsen chess trick or Magnus Carlsen Gambit? Carlsen played this chess trick and this Gambit recently against a strong grandmaster in World Blitz Chess Championship, and this trick friends is really powerful. White plays pawn to e4, black plays pawn to c5, Sicilian defense, and here main idea behind Sicilian defense is to just exchange this d pawn against the c pawn so that black can get a very powerful center like a pawn on a d7 and pawn on d6, two pawns again, white's one pawn in the center. This is Sicilian's main idea. So here Magnus Carlsen came up with pawn to a3, and at first glance it looks really a dubious move, a beginner move, but this creates some very nasty threats. White wants to play pawn to b4 and thus exchanging this a pawn against the c pawn, and on the next move he can play pawn to c3 followed by pawn to d4 and thus establishing a really powerful center. So knight to c6, far logical, you are covering this b4, but white will play b4 anyways, sacrificing a pawn, and that's why I called it Magnus Carlsen Gambit. After pawn capture b4, pawn capture b4. Of course, if black plays something else, for example pawn to e6, yeah, pawn to e5, then you can simply play pawn to c3 followed by pawn to d4. So knight capture b4, and here you should play pawn to d4, establishing a good center, and black's most logical move here is to play pawn to d5 just to react in the center. Here you should play first pawn to c3, and after knight to c6 you should take this pawn capture on d5, and after queen capture d5, here comes the main idea behind this gambit, is knight to a3. Usually knight on rim is a dim, but here this knight a3 sets some really powerful threats, and that is knight to b5. And friends, believe me, it is not possible for black to prevent this knight b5. For example, pawn to a6, then knight b5 anyways, because this pawn is pin. So if pawn capture b5, then simply rook capture on a8 is winning. So knight b5, and now we are threatening this knight to c7, from where it can attack king and the queen. So basically queen is lost, and if queen moves, then again you can play this knight c7, because this also forks this rook too. So queen has to move to d8 to cover this c7 square, and here you should play bishop to f4. Point is that now again we would like to play knight c7, and still this pawn is pinned. So here black can try this very powerful move, bishop to g4. If you take that bishop, then he can simply take the knight on b5, and point is that now this rook is covered by the queen. So what we should do after bishop to g4, we can actually play this queen to a4, and again this pawn is pinned because pawn takes knight, then queen capture 8, rook capture 8, and now queen capture 8 and rook capture 8, and white is winning. So in this position, after queen to a4, you are again threatening this knight to c7 check. So pawn to e5, this cuts the connection, but we will play this bishop capture e5 anyways, and after knight capture e5, which loses on the spot, because knight to d6 double check, and so king e7, and now pawn capture on e5, and this position is really horrible for black, because you are threatening queen capture on g4, you are threatening some like knight capture b7, and the main idea is that your king is in the middle, so your king stay in the middle for a long time, and therefore you would be having a difficulty in connecting the rook, and this position is really good for white. So what black can do after knight to a3 is to play pawn to e6. Now black's idea is to play bishop to d6 so that he can cover this c7 square, and of course this is a nice idea. So knight to b5 anyways, and here comes bishop to d6. But friends, the point in this position is that this bishop on a d6 is supported by queen, and you can easily remove this queen from here, and there are various ways. One is bishop to c4, and here point is that queen cannot take the bishop, otherwise knight capture d6, and this forks the king and the queen, so you are winning a queen. But problem for white is that after bishop d6, bishop to c4, This black queen can give a check from e4, and then he can save his bishop to b8. So if you wish, you can pause the video in this position at a moment and try to see what you can play to win a piece. Yes, of course, white is winning a piece here. Now comes queen to g4, and it creates the many threats. First of all, it covers the g2 pawn, it attacks the g7 pawn, and it covers the e4 pawn. So now there is no check, and my next threat is bishop to c4, and this is winning. So if you move the bishop, I can simply take the g7 pawn and winning. And so if you try to cover this g7 pawn with the king, and so your idea is that after bishop to c4 you can take the bishop, and after knight capture to d6 you can simply play queen d5 back, and therefore material is equal. But friends, in this position actually it's game over. You can play this knight capture d6 on the spot. Point is that queen capture d6 is not at all playable because of bishop a3, which pins the queen and winning the queen, and therefore white is winning here. So another way to protect this g7 is to play pawn to g6, but then we can play this bishop to c4, and unfortunately this queen has to leave. For example, queen to h5, which seems only logical move. Otherwise, if queen to f5, then knight capture d6, again this forks the king and the queen, and if queen capture bishop, then knight capture d6, this also forks this king and the queen, therefore winning a queen. So here only move looks is queen to h5, but after that we can simply take on h5, and after pawn capture we can take this bishop to knight capture d6, and this is totally winning. So isn't it a beautiful chess tricks, friends? I hope you really enjoy this video, and if you enjoy this video, please do subscribe this channel for more videos. Thanks very much. Bye bye.